Let's see. Okay, Mr. Jatta.
All right, thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you for being here again.
You are static.
This is another Sunday. Am I? Okay, hold on 1 second.
So my presenter is static, and I will be. Let me just go ahead. Welcome to Gambia in Perspectives, and we do present every Sunday about issues pertinent to our country, and you are, of course, invited to come in and share your views. Politics should be done based on collaborative efforts, and no one person's opinion is perfect. We are all Gambians, so it is important that we share knowledge, and in sharing knowledge, we develop ourselves and our country. It is good to disagree. Mr. Jad, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thanks again for being here this Sunday. We want to thank all Gambians and those watching us for being here again. Dr. Conte, we want to talk about a couple of things today. We want to still look at the National Assembly elections in the Gambia. We also want to look at what is called the UN's Happiness Index and where Africa stands on that. We will also look briefly at we'll look at the time value of money that came up because of the questions that Dr. Conte put on Facebook. So we feel like it is important to discuss that a little bit for the benefit of our audience as well. So we will look briefly at that, and then we will look at the what everybody is talking about since last week. That is the Will Smith, Chris Rock incident at the Oscars. We'll look at that, and I have a few comments I want to make on that. So those are the 4 areas we're going to be looking at today: the National Assembly elections and the ongoing campaign to fill those seats at the Parliament, as well as the Happiness Index, UN's 2022 Happiness Index just released, and where Africa stands on that. The time value of money, and finally, Chris Rock, Will Smith incident. Dr. Conte, during the campaign, Barrow, we all know, has been on the campaign trail for almost a week now, and it looks pretty successful. Barrow is a pretty good campaigner now. Last week I said that he's pretty much learned the trade very well. He has made some very important political statements that seem to really score points, political points for that matter. But nonetheless, this campaign is not without controversies. We've had a number of statements made by particularly Hamad Ba that are quite controversial. And at some point, I was thinking that Barrow needs to be very, very careful about Hamad Ba. And, Ba makes statements that if Barrow follows through, potentially they are things that could further destabilize our country. Some of them are Hamad Bar claims that independent candidates are illegal in many countries, and that independent candidates are a destruction to democracy. Nothing can be further from the truth. Independent candidates, I don't see why they can be illegal. I don't see why they are a destruction to democracy. In the US, we have independent candidates, um, who run on independent tickets, even though they may, Bernie Sanders is an example, a very popular independent candidate who often caucus with the Democrats. But he stands on issues, his position on many issues are very different from what traditional Democrats' stands on those issues are. So that claim is fallacious. That claim is false. Is misleading. I think Hamad Bar needs to desist from making those kind of statements. But I can understand where he's coming from. NPP is facing an insurgency of independent candidates, candidates who intended to run on NPP's platform, but they ended up not being selected by NPP. And therefore, they are now running as independent challengers to NPP's candidates across the country. So I understand he's coming from that perspective. He's coming from that point of view. But again, the responsibility on him is that he needs to be careful about incitement, of Barrow into certain actions that can be problematic for our democracy. Another point he made was a response to a private citizen or somebody who claimed that Barrow tried to buy him into supporting him. And he was even saying that if this was an election time, they would press charges against him. I don't know for what. Pressing charges against him for what? He was saying that lying against the president, is potentially a criminal offense. I don't know. These are Jame era mentalities, Jame era laws. I think Barr needs to definitely make an effort to desist from those kind of statements. I wanted to quickly say that, and also the problem of the issue of statements against Barrow's statements against Sidia Jatta in Woolley, that Jatta needs to retire from politics because of his age, and Halifa responded to that. But again, today I was listening to Dusano, who reinforced the Barrow's argument that Sidia needs to retire from politics because of his age, and that all these years he could not bring any development to Woolley. And I know Sidia criticized the development projects that Barrow brought to Woolley, by saying that those projects, nobody should say that the president brought those projects, because those projects are taxpayer money. The president basically received grants and charity on behalf of the people, and that those charities and grants and probably loans were what funded those projects. So it is misleading to say that the President Barrow brought those projects to the people. So that was the line of Sidia's argument. And he did not really mention Barrow's name, not that I remember. And he did not directly attack Barrow, but he was trying to make a point, a factual point. Nonetheless, Barrow went there and attacked Sidia that he has nothing to offer to the people of Woolley. He needs to retire from politics, like all his colleagues from the older generation, Halifa, OJ, Lawyer Dabo. And again, that's pretty much misleading. Dabo did not retire from politics. He's still active. He's still the leader of UDP. So to lump all those people together and call them out because of their age is ageism, is kind of a discrimination against age, which potentially is illegal also. So that argument doesn't hold water at all. I think Sidia has a lot to offer in the National Assembly. Matter of fact, I was reading somebody's analysis of Barrow's statement, He even argued that if we have any decency in our politics, NPP probably should not even put up a challenger to Syria Jata, because Syria is one person who is very resourceful in the National Assembly. But I know Barrow's campaign is looking for a rubber stamp parliament that will rubber stamp his bills. Of course, Syria is not going to be one like that. He's going to stand for common sense. He's going to stand for what interests the country and what interests his constituency. But nonetheless, that was the line of their argument, that Syria needs to retire from politics because of his age and because of the fact that he could not deliver anything to the people of Wulde. But I think the National Assembly, it is not their duty to deliver development to their people. Actually, development needs to be decentralized, whether a region is opposition controlled or is ruling party controlled. That should not derail their development agenda. The government should provide funds to those regions for their development. But that is something out there as well that is being debated in the Gambian media and in the Gambian public. The third thing on this matter, Dr. Conte, I wanted to look at briefly is Sabali's court case. Sabali's case has been Sabali has been ruled against by the High Court. I believe it was on Friday. I didn't get the opportunity to read the court's opinion on this, but the fact that he is, I listened to his own statement to the media that he has spoken to his party leader and they're going to take further action. I don't know what more is there for them to take. They might try to move on to the Supreme Court. But we know from the onset that Sabalis doesn't have a very strong case in this. The fact that he's been mentioned by the Commission of Inquiry, Janet Commission, and recommending his banning from politics. He has been mentioned in the Janet report for being complicit in helping Gambia defraud the Gambian public. That is sufficient enough for the IEC to bar him from running for public office. That was the requirement of the Constitution, and that requirement has been met so far. And, I share Lamin J. Dabo's legal analysis on this matter that Sabali doesn't stand a chance at all to prevail in challenging IEC's decision. And that comes to light this Friday. The court found for IEC and the Ministry of Justice. So Sabali lost the case. We'll see what else he can do with this case. He might try to go to the Supreme Court, but I don't think he still stands a chance of overturning this issue. Dr. Conte, so far that's what I want to highlight about what is going on in the country currently with regards to these upcoming National Assembly elections due in a matter of, I think, 6 days now. What's your take, Dr. Conte?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jata. I just want to share with the viewers, because in the Gambia, it seems like when you hit certain age, they just want to dump you and say that you have no use. We have the biggest democracy in the world, the United States of America, and we have senators and House members. These are their age group. Let me see, why is it not sharing? Maybe I need to move it somewhere here. Just 1 second. It is flicking. Why is it doing that? I don't know, but let me see if I put it here. You can see. You'll notice that let me accept all cookies first. Can you see what I have?
Yes.
Okay, so we have the biggest democracy. I did not accept the cookies. That's why it was shaking. And you notice that the oldest person in the United States Congress, or say the senator, Dianne Feinstein, she was born on June 22nd, 1933, and she is 87 years old. And we have Chuck Grassley of Iowa, senator, was born on September 17th, 1933. You got Richard Shelby of Alabama, age 86. Oklahoma, Jim Inhofe, 86. Vermont, Patrick Leahy is 80 years old. And Bernie Sanders is 79. Of course, you'd say that he caucuses with Democrats. So you look at all these age categories here. So this is what area that we need to take a look at in the Gambia, to have that mindset that if somebody is old, they should not be in politics. What has age got to do with that? If you can provide services, what I'm looking at, in fact, if you look at the younger people who are, or the young people who are in our National Assembly, tell me any one of them, with the exception of Halifa Sidia, that I can think of, who can just come and articulate our fiscal and monetary policies. Has any one of them ever gone to look at our budget to know that 43% of our expenditure is furnished by external aid? Does any one of them even know these young people who we are aspiring to run? Because I looked at the candidates, and it's sad that so educated people tend to stay away from politics in the Gambia. Now everybody wants to say is somebody is a good football organizer. So if you are a good football organizer, you can be a member of parliament for your constituency. But the question here is this: will this person be able to articulate? Because Namumune Lesotho in parliament, when they go there, most of them cannot talk. Our current MP of Combo is the same, and you can name several of them. So I don't want to buy the notion, that someone is old, they should not be in our politics. Look, today I looked at. Do you know that South Korea
Mhm.
has surpassed uh, uh,
Japan.
Japan
Yep.
with respect to per capita?
Right. Right.
And way back in 1950s or early 60s, South Korea's per capita wasn't more than per capita of many African countries.
Right.
So, and they don't have natural resources, but what they have is human resources that can help them to reach where they are. So I don't buy that notion. With respect to what the president said about Honorable Sidia Jata, it was very unfortunate in my view. But again, I also challenge the people who are in Doi to say that, well, here you have an attack was made on Syria. What should Doi supporters do in ensuring that Syria has enough resources for his campaign? I've not seen anything, any invitation of folks out there saying that this is one a bank account or somewhere you can send your money to help Syria. Remember, the president allocated 450,000 Gambian dollars is to the 40, is it the 49 or 40 candidates sponsored by NPP, and that is all precisely 18 million Gambian dollars. No one has questioned where the president got that money from. So sometimes we blame the president, but blame ourselves for having one area taking advantage of other areas. So the Gambia, we will continue to be what we are, if regardless of whether we are the most happiest people in West Africa or in the world, we will always be down because it seems like we are not willing to take responsibility to lift our country forward.
Very well said, Dr. Conte. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. I do agree. Matter of fact, I think Sidia, despite his age, um, is one of the most competent members in the National Assembly, together with Halifa. And pretty much the Doi candidates, the Banjul North candidate also. I can't remember his name. but
Usman Silla.
Usman Silla, yes, Usman Silla, Swaibu Toure. These are really the brains in the National Assembly. There are other people, Yakumba Jaite is pretty resourceful as well. And the GDC candidate, Omar something, a very young guy and limited by his experience and probably qualifications. But he really is making a real effort to, do his job and improve the luck of the National Assembly. But many of these people look up to Halifa and Sidia for guidance and mentoring as well. Sidia is not informed. He's pretty alert. He's very sharp still. So I don't see the basis of discriminating him because of his age. He's not running for president. He's not. He's only running for National Assembly membership. So really, it is quite baseless to challenge to ask him to retire from politics. That's a decision he can make himself, but he cannot be pressurized into that. So that is really, really something we don't need in Gambian politics. Dr. Conte, that is well said. We want to briefly look at I was reading the UN's happiness index and where Africa stands on that index. That is something I wanted us to discuss briefly. UN look at the economic condition of countries using a broad range of factors besides GDP alone. And it is quite interesting that the Scandinavian countries, countries in Northern Europe, continue to do extremely well, much, much better than many countries, including the US and most of Western European countries. I think Finland came at the top again for 4 years straight. Um, um, and then countries like Denmark, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Norway, those are the countries that really top the list. And Dr. Conte, what is very striking in these is that these countries, looking beyond their GDPs, the actual per capita GDP, looking beyond all that, these countries have a strong social support system. They're pretty egalitarian societies. Life expectancies are pretty high, and the people are very generous to each other. And the level of corruption, the perception of corruption, are very low in these countries. And these countries are not very, very capitalistic. They are quite very egalitarian. They have mixed economies, no doubt, but their societies are very egalitarian. Unlike U.S., where we live and we value competition and self-reliance and individualism. We might be the greatest economy in the world, but we are not very high on this list. I think we are at 19, just above UAE and Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic. So we're not doing very, very well when you come to the happiness index. As Americans might be relatively richer and relatively more comfortable. I mean, financially better off. But one can argue that we are relatively a very miserable society and very miserable lot. Unhappiness is pretty much higher here than in many of the other countries we are compared to, partly because going beyond GDP, per capita GDP, the social support system, egalitarianism, people looking out for each other. It's not very it's not very deeply rooted here. We value individualism a lot, and part of the reason for this is, part of the explanation for our low position on this happiness index can be attributed to that, arguably. When you look at Africa, I think Mauritius come at the top. And Mauritius has a very robust economic development program. Their GDP is relatively high. They're pretty egalitarian as well. And Dr. Conte, big countries in Gambia, in Africa, like Nigeria, Africa's greatest economy, often called Africa's greatest economy. Uh, Nigeria, Kenya are not even on the top 10 list.
Mhm.
And these countries, particularly Nigeria, is Nigeria has a very high perception of corruption. And Nigeria has pretty much very low social support system also. There is a lot of competition and individualism in Nigeria as well, compared to Gambia. Gambia, surprisingly, is at fifth position, which is quite spectacular considering our poor economic performance. Um, but I think Gambia's position on the happiness list, which is at fifth place. I mean, on the African side, if you look at African countries, Gambia is at fifth place, which is quite impressive. But you cannot explain that by our economic performance. You can only explain that by our social support system. Gambians are very egalitarian. We support each other. We help each other. You can see one person shouldering the burden of 10, 15 people, giving them a cushion in life, helping them move on, weather the storms of economic conditions, difficult economic conditions. So I think partly Gambia's position can be explained by that. Um, and Gambia is a pretty conservative society, very religious society. We're in Ramadan, and we used to express our greetings to all Gambians on behalf of on the occasion of Ramadan, starting there, I believe yesterday. Uh, I know life almost come to a standstill in Gambia during Ramadan. So we are a very religious society, very conservative. Um, but that also, there are a lot of problems with that, I understand, but there are a lot of benefits to it too. And part of the benefits of that is Gambia's egalitarianism, our tendency to support each other and help each other along the way. So that much I want to say about the happiness index, Dr. Conte. It has to do a lot with economic conditions, but it also has to do a lot with the social support systems in these countries. Um, Southern African countries like Zimbabwe almost at the most of the countries at the bottom of the list are Southern African countries. So Zimbabwe stands out pretty starkly in this. We all know Zimbabwe is coming from a very difficult situation under Robert Mugabe's last years in power. And the fact that the government has changed has not helped the situation very much still. Corruption is still very high in Zimbabwe, just like many of these countries that are low on the happiness scale. Dr. Conte, what do you have to say about uh, this index, particularly with regards to Africa and Gambia particularly?
Well, I'm just surprised. Well, capitalist countries supposed to be the least happy uh, countries because capitalism, or what does it entail? Individualism, right?
Right.
Get
True.
what you can. But sometimes poverty, poor strip countries, may entail some kind of happiness to leave everything with God. So even if you don't have what you need to have, if you trust God, you believe in God, you may you may make you happy, despite the fact that you don't have anything. So this happiness index, I don't understand it, but I guess it's a report that maybe that will help other countries. But for me, I just don't see the significance of being happy and be the least developed country. Your GDP has not grown anywhere, and then you look at your health structure is a disaster, and so many other ills that we have in our country. So I like to know the significance of the happiness index and what it can do to move forward. So that's my take on it, man.
Absolutely, very true. It is quite controversial. I agree, but I think the rationale, the idea is that the ultimate goal of human life, human survival, human life is to live a dignified, happy life. What is happiness can be controversial in itself, but I think it is an expression of people's contentment of where they are in life. And sadly, uh, sometimes money does not really provide these. Uh, they say there's a saying. I think philosophers have this tendency, like to say this. They said a dissatisfied Socrates is better than a satisfied fool. So I mean, a fool may have all the money he needs. He may have his fridge always full of food and everything he needs. But Socrates may not have all that, but he has the knowledge and the understanding of himself and the world. He might end up, even though his miserable condition may still accord him a better standing in life and more contentment than a fool who has all that stuff. Some like to replace the fool by a pig by saying a dissatisfied Socrates is better than a satisfied pig. But so I think that's the rationale behind the happiness index. But is I totally agree. Is ultimately these countries, Gambia particularly, and much of African countries, need to expand economic growth and education, healthcare, and all those things to the majority of their population, so that their living conditions can be very much enhanced and uh, improved much more. But that's that on that, Dr. Conte. I don't know if you have are you able to pull up that Excel I sent you about the TVM, or you want us to go to,
No, I can open it.
please?
Just go ahead. Let me open it.
So last week, Dr. Conte posted two questions on Facebook that has to do with time value of money. And I thought it was quite important to talk about it for the benefit of our audience. Um, so basically, there are two ways to deal with these problems. The financial calculator can be used. I prefer to use Excel. Excel is a lot more easier and more accurate in my view. The financial calculators, they call them business analyst calculators. Um, they are all. I find that they are all different. So you have to get familiar with the one that you use. Um, Otherwise, your results can vary quite a bit depending on what calculator you use. But Excel, I find Excel much more accurate and much more easier to use when you do these financial calculations. Um, I think the first question Dr. Conte asked was about mortgage payment. If you have a 10-year mortgage that you pay $5,000 on monthly at an interest rate of 6%, what is the value of this mortgage? So the question was to solve for present value. And if you're using a financial calculator, if you look at the top of the financial calculator, there are 5 values there that are relevant to calculating financial data. That is present value, future value, interest rate, payment, and there's a fifth one there. But if you have any of these, if you have 4 of these, you can always solve for the missing one. And in Dr. Conte's first question, we were to solve for present value. We know the payment, which was $5,000 a month.
Can we share it with you?
Yes, please. We know the interest rate, which is 6%. We know the duration of the.
There we go.
There you go. And we know, we know the how long this mortgage is to be paid over time, and that is number of years, which is 10 years. So basically, there are a couple of things one needs to be careful when you calculate these. You have to actually annualize these. The number of payments is different from number of years. So since we have 10 years to pay this mortgage, we have to multiply that by 12 because there are 12 months. This is a monthly payment. There are 12 months in a year. So we have to annualize that, and that will give us 120 payments. And also you have to annualize the interest rate also, because we were given a 6% interest rate a year. So you have to break that down into monthly interest rates by divided by 12. So that gives us 0.005, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you plug these numbers, you have to set future value to 0. So once you do that, you can go to Excel, press your equal sign, and then type in PV, and then hit your tab, and then it will pull up the formulas for you. Just plug in the numbers that you have, and then enter. It will calculate the future present value for you. So that's how you do this. I'm going to save time. Not going to go through the second one, but it's basically the same thing. You just have in the second one, you calculate. You are looking for payment. So you have the other values. Just go to Excel, do the same procedure, type in payment, PMT, and then plug in your numbers. It will give you your answer, basically. So Excel is pretty easy to use to calculate these values. But Dr. Conte, the real thing I want to talk about is the interest rate. I think the interest rate is a very important and critical thing when you do these numbers. And understanding how financial institutions work. So, I post this problem on the thing on Facebook as is a bird in hand really worth more than 2 in the boots? Mm-hmm. We like to say that this is a common phrase, common idiom we use, a common saying that a bird in hand is worth more than 2 in the boots. It is largely true, but in the financial world, it can be problematic. Actually, one professor at Yale, Ivan Fisher, think that is not true. A bird in hand is not always worth more than 2 in the books. And the whole idea is because of the interest rate. So when we look at the present value and we look at the future value of money, this topic is about time value of money. The value of money changes over time. So we are talking about present money, present value, whether you want to spend money today, or future value, whether you want to spend money in the future. You want to defer spending money now and leave it for the future. Now, the PV, present value, and FV, future value, are basically the same thing. They are the same sides of the same coin, right? And what linked them together is the interest rate. Now, if you want to defer spending today for the future, then interest rate place in that. But if you want to spend money today rather than leave it for the future, then you have to use the discount rate. It's still the interest rate, but the name changes. You have to discount it to today's dollars. Like if you have a project or you have a if you have a project that has a number of cash flows into the future, and you want to evaluate or you want to value that project today, you have to use the discount rate of all the future cash flows of that project to know the real value of that project today. And that will give you an idea whether it is worthwhile to go ahead with that project or not. So present value and future value are really connected by interest rate or the discount rate. So, Dr. Conde, I think those are some of the very important things we could talk about when it comes to time value of money. Um, I'm going to say this. I know we like to say cash is king, which comes to this point, the bird in horn is worth more than two in the bush. I'm going to tell a lawyer story about this. About this. There's a story that two lawyers were at a bank, and then when a bank robbery started, and these two lawyers, one of them owe the other some money, and in the process of the bank robbery, the lawyer put his hand in his pocket and pulled out a bunch of cash and handed it to the lawyer he owes money to and tell, you remember I owe you this money, you've been after me, here it is, I'm paying you back. So that's funny, but do you want to receive cash in that instance? When there is a bank robbery going on, you are likely going to lose that money, right? So, so that, in my view, is a simple illustration that cash is not always desirable. Cash today is not always desirable. You probably sometimes want to invest that money for the future. So again, just a simple illustration that time value of money is pretty crucial, and it can help in the decision of whether you want to spend that money today or you want to invest it for the future. And and it is also basically the tool that we use to evaluate the price of assets and even projects and businesses. If you want to know how much a business or a project is worth, basically you look at the cash flows and calculate it, bring it down, evaluate it into today's dollars by using the discount rate, right? So it is quite important. And thank you for posting those questions online, Dr. Conte, for the benefit of your followers and your readers. I think it was very critical that we all understand that. I know a lot of us did not study finance, but those of us who have some idea of finance, either through school, you know, um, it actually brought out something for us. And again, we want to thank you for bringing those up. I think Lajalo did a pretty good work in trying to solve the first question you asked. So, but again, for the benefit of our audience, we want to go over this a little bit and talk about it for a little bit more clarity. Dr. Kwante, you want to say more on this?
Yeah, I do, because if you look at the computation and you look at the base salary of Gambians
Yeah.
in the Gambia, no one can afford, to take a loan of even $1 million is to build a house. No one in the Gambia precisely will have the ability to borrow $450,367 is to build a house. So these are things, and if you look at it invariably in the U.S., you notice that mortgage interest rates are lower than other loans. So I'm looking at, let's say, for instance, somebody wants to borrow. If somebody in the Gambia wants to borrow $2 million to build a house, and the prevailing interest rate, let's say, is 12%. I know interest rates in the Gambia are even higher than the rate that I just stated.
Right.
You notice that the person is going to end up paying $28,694 a month. So who can do that in our country? Well, maybe someone in the U.S. may or United Kingdom or somewhere will be able to do that. And this was what I was when I used to write something about Tufts building, and also the interest, the loans that banks were offering to finance his buildings. I said that these items are not for Gambians in Gambia. No one can offer it. No one can afford it. And if you're going to be able to, if you can afford this, you're going to be stealing. Because look at the permanent secretary who makes 50,000 or even $75,000 a year. You tell me that $1 million a house. So what can we do in our country to improve lending? And since the Central Bank of the Gambia wants to come up with this agricultural bank, I was just wondering, what can we do? You also look at people, if we can have foreigners coming in, like Radfield Farms. I think they have three locations: one in Sukuta, one in Tubakuta, and one in Bonto. And I think they have over 300 meters by 300 meters, or nine, so in 90,000 square meters of land.
Mhm.
And these people are growing these vegetables, frozen vegetables, and selling them to countries like the United Kingdom, because someone told me they went to a store and saw vegetable from the Gambia. So these are things that government can try to entice diasporans who can do that. I know some people going to say, well, in the Gambia it's very difficult to trust anyone when it comes to business, because when you are there, they're going to do it. But the sooner you leave, they're going to just all slack behind. So when we talk about nation building, these are things that I think we can address, and the government can do. Because if you look at it, urbanization has taken space in the Gambia, and very few people have houses, and most of those houses that are even built, someone told me 80% of them are unoccupied. So if you want to go into agriculture, does the bank can where can we find financing so that we can improve or uplift our people? So again, if you want to build a house that you anticipate to cost you $2 million at 12% interest, and you anticipate to pay that in 10 years, you're going to be paying 28,694. So precisely, if you are in the United States, uh, you're probably going to pay less than $600 a month. If you are in the United Kingdom, probably maybe about 450. So these are things that we can try to engage each other to see what we can do. Do we need to lower the interest rate? Can the government provide those funds to us so that we can uplift our country? And how are we going to be able to improve our businesses, private enterprise? How can these people be able to go out there and take loan? Educate them to say that if you have a profit, that profit doesn't mean it needs to be shared. That profit needs to be plowed back into your business. So, but again, if foreigners can come and have farms measurement 500 by 500 meters, and yes, still for us in the Gambia, we are here, and the government can use our talent, our finances to do those things. And I hope the Barrow administration will take a note of that, because you notice that so many people are graduating from college, and those who are graduating, they cannot get jobs. We are graduating more lawyers than necessary. So we are graduating a lot of people with degrees in developmental studies that I don't even understand what that is. So how on earth are we going to be able to develop our country? So I thought by providing this, so we don't have to go politics continuously, but we can talk about certain things that I believe will help. But again, with low pay in the Gambia, someone wanting to build a house that they anticipate to cost them $2 million at the prevailing interest rate of 12%, you are going to be paying $28,694 if the interest rate, yeah, with the interest rate of 12%. But again, the question is, those who are in the Gambia, tell me how many of them can afford to do that out of their low pay wages. So these are things that the government can try to, because if we uplift uh, the housing sector, we can create employment. If we uplift agriculture, we can create employment and also minimize food insecurity. And it seems like no one is talking about those things. So I thought this is important, so I'm going to stop right there.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Yes, very well said. I think the Gambia's problem, there are low salaries, low wages in the country. But part of that is because of the low productivity in the country. The size of the Gambian economy is very small, and there's very low productivity. So people's earnings are going to be very much dependent on the productivity, the size of the economy and productivity. And most of the things used in construction and food and all that stuff are imported stuff. So all these prices are inflated because stuff coming into the country coming more expensively, and therefore, they become unaffordable by a lot of people. What the government can do is actually help, in lowering interest rates with the banks, so they can be able to lend out to people to invest into stuff like those in housing and private business. But ultimately, the size of the economy has to expand and productivity has to increase to boost actually spending in the country and affordability of most of this stuff by ordinary people and even people employed. A lot of people are employed, but they're just getting starving wages. The wages cannot get them anywhere. So, and that is in many ways is dependent on the economy itself. So there's a lot of work to do, in my view, in order to change these things. But ultimately, I think Gambian people need to be able to access funding, through the private banks. Um, and it's a vicious cycle because that also depends on their earnings, so which is also dependent on the size of the economy and productivity as well. But very well said, Dr. Conte. And I think that we have Barrow has a diaspora uh, kind of an organization, a diaspora leadership now that is kind of trying to link the diaspora population to the Gambia government in terms of investments and relocations and all other things. I don't know what they are doing, whether they are dysfunctional or, they're doing something. I'm not quite sure. But I do know there is that office now set up by the Barrow regime. So we'll see how that plays out. But these are the situations on the ground right now. Thank you very much, Dr. Conte. I think we are coming to the end of these. I'm going to make a commentary, talk a little bit about what everybody is talking about, the Oscars, Will Smith and Chris Rock, the incident at the Oscars. Everybody is making a comment on this. Scientists, psychologists have a view on this. Publicists, PR people have a view on this, and lawyers have a view on this as well. So, of course, the laymen all have their views. But first and foremost, I think Will Smith's attack on Chris Rock, who is a comedian and makes jokes at people's expense. That's his living. That's That's how he makes money, right? So I like comedians very well. I enjoy comedy. My favorite comedian was Jay Leno because of the political jokes he make, the jokes he make at the expense of politicians and public figures. I love his comedies a lot, nightly shows. But Will Smith's attack on Chris Rock, uh, at the basic level, reinforce the stereotype that black people are violent and they are incapable of controlling their emotions. So that, in my view, is perpetuation or reinforcement of that stereotype. It is unfortunate that he had to do that on live TV at the Oscars. It is very, very unfortunate. I think he should have been matured enough to control his emotions, not to play into the stereotypes of black on black violence and the tendency of black people to be violent and incapable of controlling their emotions. But having said that, Dr. Conte, psychologists and biologists will have a perspective on this in the sense that actually I look at some psychological evaluations of um, Will Smith's actions, and they frame it in terms of what they call the amygdala hijack or the amygdala moment. The amygdala is part of the limbic system of the brain. If you look at the human brain, is pretty much divided into three broad parts. The bottom end of the human brain, where the spinal cord joins the brain, is what they call the primitive brain, the reptilian brain, right? And then just above that is the limbic system, and then above that is the cortex. The cortex is what really is involved in thinking and processing, making decisions, sound decisions. Um, the reptilian brain is probably the oldest part of the brain. It's very primitive. Um, some biologists think it can only evaluate information in three categories. Can I eat this? Can it eat me? Or can I mate with it? Uh, so the primitive brain, the reptilian brain, is very, very primitive, and a lot of our other behaviors, sexual behavior, and more instinctive behaviors are pretty much controlled in this part of the brain. Above that is the limbic system. The limbic system is more involved with our emotions. The amygdala is part of the limbic system, and it's basically, biologists recognize it as pretty much involved in issues about anxiety, aggression, and all that stuff. Uh, so, um, so the argument is that when somebody is really emotionally agitated, instead of the cortex, the more advanced part of the brain, involved in decision making, processing information, and make a rational, um, better decision, the limbic system, the amygdala hijacks the decision making process through emotions only, and then the person will act without properly processing, evaluating all the facts, and just acts out of sheer emotion because the amygdala is in control. So the explanation is that Will Smith has an amygdala hijack and just acted purely out of emotions and did what he did. Um, that's pretty possible. It is quite plausible, but um, I think the basic advice would be that Will Smith should have been a more mature person and not allow himself to be carried by emotion and do what he did. Uh, the lawyers, no doubt, also weigh in on this, and basically, from the legal perspective, what Will Smith did is both a criminal offense as well as a tort law offense, intentional tort. to put it more precisely, more accurately. Uh, it could be a misdemeanor in terms of criminal offense. Um, it basically comes down to assault and battery. Because he hit Chris Rock, it's a battery. But usually battery charges come with assault also. Assault is the apprehension of harm, which basically is also called attempted battery. If you attempt to attack somebody or harm somebody, um, the harm is battery, but the attempt is assault. I know this is different from how the lay people use it, but in the eyes of the law, it is framed like this. So Will Smith could be charged for this, even though Chris Rock decided not to press charges. But the prosecutors has prosecutorial discretion. They could still go ahead and charge him, even though Chris Rock didn't want to press charges. But it looks like the California has better things to do than go after Will Smith and press charges against him. So it looks like as we speak now, he's not going to be charged for anything. There's a civil law issue there also, intentional tort. The fact that he attacked this guy in public, not even in public, the fact that he attacked him, there's a civil liability also. There's an intentional tort. And Chris Rock could actually go to court and claim damages. And that will probably pay him a lot more money than the criminal offense, which in California, I understand, from one lawyer's perspective, there's a fine of only $2,000, which, the King Richards, right? That's what they call him, Will Smith, can easily pay that, right? But the civil law civil law claim could actually cost him a lot more because there will be, usually lawyers in civil liabilities will also claim pain and suffering, right? Which can bring in additional fines or liability, monetary damages, to put it that way. So there are all these categories that can come to play in what Will Smith did. But also, I understand that some PR people, public relations people, are saying that Will Smith's apology on his Instagram post is is a is a is a how do they put it? It's a case study case. It's a case that needs to be studied because they thought it was very effective um, in in calming situations and very effective in helping him take control of the narrative. Uh, a few things that have been highlighted is that his ability to apologize profusely and his admission that um, he did not deny the fact that this is not him, that he did not attribute this to some other thing. He acknowledged that this is Will Smith who did this, but he's not proud of the Will Smith who did that. And he is a person who is not perfect, and he is working hard to improve, to be a better person. So the fact that he acknowledged all of these and took responsibility for his actions instead of denial and making excuses and digging in like most people would do. Publicists and public relations people think he did a fantastic job by acknowledgement and admission of um, his wrongdoing. So those are the various dimensions that played out in these. But I think Will Smith, like I said in the beginning, Dr. Conte, I think he played into the stereotypes, that of black on black violence and black people's inability to control emotions and the tendency to be violent in in similar circumstances. What do you think of this, Dr. Conte? I do understand. I just wanted to make a commentary on this. You don't have to get into these controversies, but if you have something to say, go ahead before we close this show today.
Well, for me, I don't have much to say about it because Chris also put Will in a very funny situation. So
Right. Actually, I think he just resigned from the academy now.
yeah,
So, and they're still reviewing his actions. I think the academy is going to come up with a
yeah.
number of punishments for him, but
Mhm.
he got ahead and just resigned from the academy as
Yeah.
well. So, yeah.
I don't have much to add.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you for being here. I think this is the end of the show. We will meet again next
One
Sunday.
second. Tomorrow, maybe it's, let's just add this up. I was just thinking about the old ways of making mud blocks
Okay.
and building a house with it, not a story building, but horizontal building, and to see whether doing that, if you add more cement to the external, can you tell the difference between that and a cement block?
Interesting. I think our civil engineers need to be a little bit more
No,
creative.
yeah, I mean, if we can get some people in building, to come and talk about that, because I think we are really spending a lot of money on cement.
Absolutely, yes,
If
absolutely.
if you have no intention of building a story, if you're having a story building, if you
Right.
have that, what's going to be the difference?
Exactly. Yeah,
I'm
we'll
just
see.
curious.
We'll see what we come up next Sunday. So
Okay,
thank
thank
you
you,
for
my
bringing
friend.
that up. Thank you, Dr. Conte. We'll meet again.
Take care. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.